Taking this grand final, the final ticks are in and Rise has done it. Make some noise, Atlanta, for this Rise Nation squad that tops the Division A. The winners here in Atlanta. Incredible.
Alrighty, what is up, everybody? Welcome to episode 6 of COD Talks. I am your host, Furs95, and today I'm going to break down all things CWL Atlanta. Hopefully, most of y'all were able to catch most of the action this weekend. It was an awesome weekend for me personally. I was finally able to get myself to an event. It was a great experience. Just so many positive things to talk about. I'm going to start off with kind of just my general thoughts on the experience of going to an event. And for those of you out there that are maybe a little hesitant to go to your first event, or you haven't been yet, or I got to say, go, man, go for it. It's an awesome experience. Even I was a little hesitant at first back in the day, just because, I didn't really know anyone. I was like, I don't really want to go by myself, but trust me, it's worth it. I was actually able to meet up with a few guys from the optics subreddit, but trust me, there's a lot of people that go just by themselves. It's easy to, make friends there. Everyone's there is, big competitive COD fan. So it's a great experience. And I would highly, highly recommend, that if you do get a chance to go to an event, go for it. It was a really fun time. But with that said, guys, just kind of my general thoughts, about the event. I really liked, I know that, this event was a new setup in terms of we're back to the single stage for the main stage. There's not the double stage setup that we've seen in previous events, and I personally really enjoyed it. I really liked how you're pretty close to the players on main stage, and they're not too far away, and it's always fun to see their reactions after a big play and stuff like that. And it's nice to have just sort of, you're focused on one game in main stage as opposed to two. Much less confusing. And the way they have it set up, in case you guys aren't aware, is that they have two big screens on each side where each of the players are playing, just above them. And then below that, they have a smaller screen that shows each one of the players' perspectives. And then in the middle, they had a smaller screen that shows the game as well. I know that I think some people felt like the VIP section maybe wasn't placed well, just because you kind of, if you're sitting in the middle, you kind of had to turn one way or the other to really watch the game. The screen in the middle was pretty small. That was, like, I guess, a minor complaint of mine, is that, you kind of had to choose your side. Sitting in the middle probably was honestly the worst spot, just because of the fact that you had to turn your head. But and the only other minor complaint I had was the lights that were kind of in your eyes, because you're looking up, right? The screen's up, kind of like you're at a movie theater, and there's these lights that are kind of like distracting you a little bit. Which was a little bit of an annoyance, but that was really it. Other than that, it was awesome. I mean, the quality of the broadcast was great. The production was great. I really loved the audio. The sound was just awesome. It really was like this powerful sound. It felt like you were in a movie theater, honestly. That was the biggest thing that stood out to me, was the audio quality. But other than that, I mean, like I said, it was a great experience. The whole entrance, when you walked in, they had all the banners of previous event winners, which was really, really cool. And then at the front, they had the COD Champ Trophy, which was always cool to see. I really liked how what was also really cool was how they had the Bravo station set up. You basically were like, you could literally like watch the match. I mean, you're literally like 10 feet away from the players over when they're playing on the Bravo streams and stuff like that. So that was also another really cool thing, is I was able to watch an EG match, right there. I could literally hear their communications, which was an awesome experience as well. And then you've obviously got the players walking around, and you get to meet them and take pictures with them and talk to them, and it's a really cool experience. It was just so surreal to see all these guys in person finally. These guys that I've been watching on Twitch and YouTube for years and years now. It was just a great experience. the other thing I wanted to mention was the casters. I actually thought, ironically, that the casting at this event was phenomenal. I thought it was really, really good, which is ironic just because, obviously this was the first event that we've lost our beloved Courage. He was not there. As most of you guys know, he actually I just saw the news that he just joined Optic, which is pretty cool. He's obviously a full-time content creator now, and wish him nothing but the best. But despite that, I think that there's been talk of all the talent that we've lost in terms of casters in recent years, which is definitely true. But I thought this event was casted phenomenally. I thought Miles in particular has absolutely become my favorite caster. He's just a phenomenal caster. He flows really well. He's really witty. He's really funny. I think he mixes it up really well with his witty remarks real quick, but then he'll get right back into the action. He's not over the top with anything. He's real smooth. He's a great pickup. I hope he sticks with us for a while, because he's definitely become my favorite caster nowadays. But just down the lineup, I think everyone did a phenomenal job. The only two casters that I don't particularly care for in terms of just their casting specifically is Rich and Blaze. I think that's his name from Gears of War. And nothing against them personally. I just don't particularly care for their casting. It's kind of obvious they don't have like a really good knowledge of the actual game, and it kind of shows. But once again, they're new to this, and I'm not gonna roast them just because they're new to the game. They'll get better as time goes by. It's just like anything. The more you do it, the better you get. But I think Rich is maybe better suited to be like the host of the analyst desk as opposed to casting. But we'll see. But other than that, down the line, I thought Maven did a fantastic job. Maven's a guy that's, I think, he's been really good for a while now. I think he's really consistently improved his casting as the time goes by, and I thought he was really good. Benson's another one that I think Benson's casting has improved tremendously since the Ghost Black Ops 2 days. He's really come into his own, and I actually really enjoy Benson's casting as well these days. You obviously had Revan, who's a fan favorite. He's great. He's a great analyst. Has a really good knowledge of the game, obviously being former pro. Momo did a really good job. I think him and Miles have become the newfound duo. I think they bounce off of each other really well. Trying to think who else did. Merc did a really good job. I think Merc has consistently been improving his casting as well. It's always, to me, what I would like to see COD follow more, in my opinion, is sort of how sports do it, where there's a play-by-play commentator and there's an analyst. I think that's the perfect mix, in my opinion. And analysts, in my opinion, are guys like Merc, guys like Revan, former pros, Mr. X, guys who've been coaching the game, who really have that extra level of knowledge. Not to say that guys like Maven and Benson don't know the game, because their game knowledge is actually very, very good if you listen to them cast. But an analyst is someone who has actual experience competing at the top level and really can give you that extra insight. And I think that's to me, I would like to see COD follow that a little bit more. I know we're obviously kind of limited with our talent, and we're not always going to be able to follow that formula, but I just think down the road, I think that would be a good combination to see. Pair up. I think Maven and Merc is a good example of that, or Revan and Miles. So things like that. But like I said, I think that the casting is bright. I think the casters did a really good job. I'm actually, despite all the talent we've lost, I'm actually very encouraged with what I heard this weekend from the casters. So hats off to all the casters. They did a phenomenal job. With that said, guys, we're going to hop into the actual results of the tournament. For the most part, this tournament wasn't all that surprising to me. I think the biggest shock to me, honestly, was how Optic played, specifically on Sunday. As you guys know, I am an Optic fan, and it was a little heartbreaking to see them go 0-6 on Sunday. But I'm a competitive COD fan first, and there were so many great matches, so many great storylines from this tournament that I still enjoyed myself thoroughly. But with that said, guys, let's go over the top 8 final results here. And what I'm going to introduce, I think, after each event is a little segment called Where I Was Right and Wrong. And just to see, I'm going to go over, what my predictions were, where actually I got my predictions right, where I got them wrong. So the top 8 as follows. Went like this. So we got EG placing 7th and 8th, TK placing 7th and 8th, Optic placing 5th and 6th, E United placing 5th and 6th, Envy placing 4th, LG placing 3rd, Red Reserve placing 2nd, and Rise placing 1st. Now, my predictions, I got 4 out of 8, which I'll take. That's not too bad. I think that's, I'm batting 500, so I'll toot my own horn a little bit here. I had Rise winning the event. I had Optic 2nd, so I got that one wrong, obviously. I did have LG correctly placing 3rd. I had Envy correctly placing 4th. I had FaZe placed in 5th, 6th. They didn't, I don't know. I think FaZe placed like 12th, maybe 12th or 16th, right around there. I had Red placing 5th, 6th, which obviously was wrong. Red placed 2nd. And then I correctly had TK placing 7th and 8th, and then I had Echo Fox placing 7th and 8th, and I think Echo Fox finished right around that 12th place area as well. So I was 4 out of 8. I'll take it. Biggest thing that jumps off to me, first of all, congratulations to Rise Nation. I mean, these guys are just on another level. I mean, they just played unbelievable throughout the entire tournament. They're on a level of their own, and they proved it throughout the weekend. I mean, they're clearly the most complete team in the game. Every one of those guys does a phenomenal job at their respective roles. Congratulations to Methods too. He was named the tournament MVP, rightfully so. He had like a 1-3 KD and SND, or I think he had like a 1-2. I saw the stats earlier, and he was top 5 in both respawn and S&D stats, which is just ridiculous. I know he's an AR player, so it's a little easier to boost your KD stats that way. But regardless, Methods was unbelievable the entire event. What stuck out to me the most about Rise is how consistent their S&D was. I think their map count in S&D was 8 and 2, which is just ridiculous when you think about it. That is an unbelievable map count. And even more impressive, their CTF, they were a perfect 8 and 0. I mean, that's even more ridiculous. But, we've said it before, S&D wins championships, and I think Rise proved that this weekend. Their S&D was just phenomenal all weekend long. They have probably the best S&D player in the game in TJ Haley. They just really seem to efficiently trade well. They're just always on the same page. And it was just an unbelievable display from them. So once again, congrats to Rise for winning the tournament. Well deserved. I'm really happy for all the players on that team. I really like all the players on that team. I'm happy for Gunless after finally finding a steady roster for him, and he's been able to excel in his role on this team. I'm happy for Methods, who's been around forever, and as well as Looney, who's a veteran, been around forever, knows how to win. And another point to make about Looney is, in case you guys didn't know, he was very sick, I think, throughout the tournament, specifically on Sunday. And he pulled a little Michael Jordan on us and, battled it out and played phenomenal. And then hats off to TJ Haley as well. TJ has just been, in my opinion, I think he's the best sub in the game right now. I think that his ability to, I know he doesn't have the best KD, but his number of engagements he's getting in are just ridiculous. It's off the charts. He's such an aggressive sub, loves to get in your face. And then not to mention his playmaking ability, S&D. So he's been phenomenal as well. And, hats off to Rise once again. But I also want to give my hats off to Red Reserve, man. They made one of the most unbelievable losers bracket runs we've ever seen in competitive Call of Duty. I mean, they took out TK, they took out Optic, they took out FaZe. I forget who else they took out, but they were knocking out everyone left and right. They took out LG too. So I think they took out Envy as well, which is, I mean, it's just it's ridiculous. They were just knocking them out left and right. Hats off to Joe. That dude was just unbelievable the whole weekend. It was unfortunate. I think they just ran out of gas a little bit there in the grand finals, but regardless, I don't think Rise just wasn't going to lose. Once they beat LG in the winners finals, they weren't losing. I mean, no team out there was going to take 2 best of 5s from them the way they were playing. So, it was an impressive performance from Red nonetheless. Like I've said before, they are clearly the number 1 team from Europe. And, a clear top 5 team at worst, probably a top 3 team right now in the game. So they really impressed me all weekend long with their resilience. To make a losers bracket run like that, you got to have a lot of resilience and a lot of confidence in your team to make a run like that. So hats off to Red, and I'm excited to see what they can do. I fully expect them to continue contending for titles because I don't think they're going anywhere, and I'm excited to see what we get from Red at future events. Next up, LG finished third. LG and Rise were the pretty clear favorites going into this event, and it was only fitting that they would match up in the winners finals, which, turned out to be a very good series. It was funny that I think it was after the hard point. It was like by far the maddest I've ever seen Jordan Kaplan JCap after a game. I mean, he was heated. I don't know if you guys saw that, which just goes to show the expectations that this team has for themselves. They expect to be winning events, and I know they were disappointed with their finish. I'm sure they felt like they should have won the tournament, but they got a lot to be happy about. I mean, they're still a top 2 team in the game for sure. They wiped the floor with Optic in that winners semifinals game. I was really impressed with their hard point. They're a real strong hard point team. They really know. They have a lot of heavy slayers on that team. Octane, JCap played phenomenal this weekend too. JCap was on the money this weekend. John is another guy who's just been such a steady and consistent sub for a while now. And this Slack's a guy I know that some people think he's a little overrated, and I don't know if I necessarily agree with that. I think Slack showed he was maybe the most inconsistent player on LG this weekend, but Slack's a guy that shows up when it matters for the most part. I mean, he had a phenomenal, I think it was the search against Optic, where he was going off. I think it was on USS Texas. So this, once again, LG, they're going to be back for sure. They're clearly a top tier team. I expect them to be contending for titles too as the season moves on. And then Envy as well. Envy, I think, is finally starting to find their stride in this game. I know that they're a team that gets onto each other when they lose, and that's just because, well, once again, they want to win too. I mean, they think that they are a team that can win events, and they definitely are. I think they proved that this weekend. Slasher continued to play very well. I think he had the top KD in Respawn, I believe, at like a 1.32, which is, ridiculous. I mean, considering all the teams they had to play. I think Hook and Temp are really starting to find their stride as those sub players, and then Classic as well. Classic had a very good event. I don't know exactly what his numbers were, but he was really impressing me. He's really started to, I think, find his stride as that flex player too. He looked really good in S&D from what I saw. So I think Envy is finally starting to find their stride, and again, I think there's a lot of positives for them to take away from this tournament as well, and I expect Envy to be contending for titles too as the World War II season moves on. And then E United, man, I gotta say, E United, this is the biggest 180 of a team I think we've ever seen. I mean, they were just in the dumps on Friday. Clay had the whole M1 Garand gentlemen's agreements breaking drama that I'll get more into later, but I mean, they were just a team that was just desperate. I mean, they were just desperate for a win. On Friday, they started to slowly find their stride on Saturday, and then, they had a good run on Sunday. I mean, they had a good losers bracket run, and I know it's a team that's probably going to break up eventually. I think it's not even due to the fact that they don't like each other. I think there's a pretty mutual respect for one another. I think they just all recognize the fact that there's just a role clash on this team. You got 3 ARs in a game that requires primarily a 3 sub meta. So, I know they're probably going to break up, but it was fun to see Clay. Clay had a very good event. He had the top KD in S&D, I think, at like a 1.47, which is just ridiculous. Clay clearly still has it. I expect Clay to be a pretty high profile free agent once that time comes. I think the free agency's after CWL Birmingham, I believe, or maybe after stage 1 playoffs, one of the two. But it's coming up relatively soon. I'm interested to see what Clay does with the future. I'm interested to see just really what all these players do. I think the Twins are still an incredibly talented duo. And then don't underestimate Silly. I know Silly's kind of struggled in World War II, but he's still a guy that I think has a spot on a top contending team as well. Depending on what roles teams need to fill, but definitely interested to see where Clay can play, because Clay clearly is still a heavy hitting AR in my opinion. I think he's a guy that will bring a lot of veteran leadership and experience to a team, and I'm interested to see what he does. But moving on, got to touch on Optic. Optic clearly, disappointing finish for them. They're always expecting to win. Anything that's not first for Optic is disappointment. They'd be the first ones to tell you that. And it was a pretty discouraging event for Optic overall, to be honest with you. I know they had a pretty good pool play, went 3-1. We're feeling pretty good, and then they got a pretty easy first draw in the winners bracket, that first round against Lightning Pandas. Looked good in that match. Scump really seems to be finding his stride as that sub player. Krim was very good all weekend. He was, in my opinion, Optic's most consistent player. You can maybe make an argument for Scump, but Krim just seemed to have very few off maps. He clearly, to me, is a top player in World War II, and it's kind of a shame that he was, his performance largely went to waste this weekend, him and Scump. Formal was probably the main storyline for Optic, in my opinion. He's just never seemed comfortable with the sub. Simple as that. I think he'd be the first one to tell you it was probably one of his weaker events with Optic, for sure. He was never going off like we're used to Formal going off. He set such a high bar for himself in his standards up to this point that it's just, he just wasn't up to par this event. I'm sure he'd be the first one to tell you that. And then Damon as well. I felt bad for Damon. Karma seems to always be the scapegoat for this team, which is unfortunate because he was not the only one that had a bad event. Formal had a bad event as well, like I said. But I know Damon's a guy that's really hard on himself. I saw him come out and tweet, he was probably maybe his worst event ever, which, is probably true. He was really lackluster in Respawn in particular. Just wasn't getting the kills. I'm interested to see, obviously one thing I do want to touch on is that Krim did come out and say that there are going to be role changes on the team. I think that Formal is going to go back to that main AR position. And then we've got, what I think is going to happen is Krim is going to be the secondary sub, and Karma's going to play the flex role, which I think is what they need to try. Clearly, they were just getting dominated in Respawn on Sunday. They went 0-6 in map count, and the respawns, none of them were close. The LG ones, the hardpoint wasn't close. The CTF was an absolute bloodbath on first half. They made that little comeback in second half, but the game was just out of reach at that point. And, against Red, again, the respawn was just not very close. The CTF was not very close again. I don't know if this Optic team has ever been dominated like that in respawns ever, with this current roster. With these names, you just would never expect them to have that type of performance in Respawn in a LAN environment, and on Sunday too, because this is a team that prides themselves off of getting better as the tournament goes on, and it was pretty much the opposite this tournament, which was, again, just really shocking. Just a shocking performance. They were just lost. The whole their trades were off. Their pace was off. And I think Krim mentioned that maybe it was him playing a little too slow at that AR position. That's one of the reasons why they switched Formal back to the AR position, because he's more of an aggressive AR when he has an AR in his hands. And I think I'm hoping that, one thing that I was a little skeptical about Krim going into this event is that he didn't quite seem to have adjusted from the FG meta, but he didn't miss a beat this tournament. He completely, answered that question. He was right on par with how he's been playing so far in World War II at CWL Atlanta. And I'm very curious to see if he can keep that play up, switching to a sub role. I know that from a KD perspective, he's obviously not going to be able to. The ARs have a clear advantage when it comes to KD stats. But, I think that Krim seems to have a really good understanding for this game. And I think that'll transition into the sub role as well. We haven't really seen Krim run a sub really since, we haven't seen Krim run a sub in a AR sub meta really since Black Ops 2. In Ghost, the meta was pretty much all subs. In AW, I think he was kind of like a flex player in I'm trying to remember. I don't even. In AW, I think he was. Yeah, because Formal was the AR, and then Karma was kind of the. Krim's always just been a flex player on this team for the most part. But I'm interested to see him be a primary sub. I think he hasn't played that role since Black Ops 2. Then moving over to Damon, I think Damon, I'm hoping he adopts the flex role because I think he's already proven that he's just not very comfortable running a primary sub in this game. And I know he's voiced his opinion that he thinks, he'd like to run an AR as well. So it's really just whatever Damon's comfortable with. I think that, and obviously that's a part of being a flex player is running an AR and a sub dependent on what the team needs and what he's comfortable with. So, I think that, the role change is definitely much needed. I think that was apparent after their Sunday performance. And, I'm just interested to see how it affects the team. I think it'll be for the better. I think it should be. It really can't get much worse than how they performed on Sunday. So, we'll see. We'll see what happens. Thankfully, they this is the point in the season where we have pretty steady amount of events and competition. I think Birmingham is, I want to say 3 weeks away. Maybe less, maybe more, but it's about 3 weeks away, I believe. So they'll have a quick turnaround to kind of bounce back after this event. And I'm just interested to see, how they adopt to their new roles. And then with that said, moving on, we got TK 7th and 8th. TK, again, I think they've plateaued a little bit in terms of the team. I think they still prove that they're a top team though. They played LG really well in that first round. They got reverse swept, but they're still a team that can compete with the best. I think the problem is that the shift has, and with the combination of the meta shift to a 3 sub 1 AR meta, and then couple that with the Valkyrie edition, I don't think that favors TK very much because they're kind of an AR heavy team between Accuracy and Chino. So I just think that it's unfortunate because I think this is a team that still has a ton of talent. I think Kenny is still a top sub in the game. I think that, Accuracy is still a very good AR, and Chino's Chino's slowly, I think, starting to adapt to the I didn't get to watch a ton of TK. I think that Accuracy was playing the flex role and Chino was the main AR. I could be wrong about that, but either way, I think what's holding them back is they really need to find, a consistent flex player, whether it is Accuracy or Chino, because Kenny just doesn't have a ton of help at that sub position in terms of just slaying. Theory's always been a guy that's never been a big slayer. He's a more of a playmaker in S&D and a leader and a shot caller, but Kenny needs more help at that sub position. Simple as that for TK to really continue to contend for titles. And then EG with the top 8 finish. EG is a team that I always love to see do well. I had them finishing. I had them finishing second in their pool, which they weren't able to do, but they did make a pretty good losers bracket run. They got a pretty favorable bracket if I'm remembering correctly. I don't think they had to play a ton of top teams in the losers bracket. I think that I forget who they are. I think E United eliminated them. But, decent performance from EG. I think EG, it's pretty clear that Nameless is just not a top AR in this game, unfortunately. And that's you cannot compete for titles in this game without a top AR. You look at all the top teams, they all have top ARs. LG with Octane, Red Reserve with Rated, Rise with Methods, Envy with Slasher. You need a top AR in order to contend with titles. And I just don't think Nameless is that guy. unfortunately, because I think that the other three, actually, I think Akes had a pretty good event himself. App is starting to find his groove at that SMG position, and then Enable had a pretty solid event as well from what I saw. I think Enable's starting to come into his own at that flex position that we talk about that's so important. But EG's a team, man. That's a team. I would say EG and FaZe are the two teams that I believe should go after Clay the hardest, because I think Clayster would really fit into either one of those teams very well, because I think what those two teams are missing is a top AR. You look at FaZe, I think that Replays, he's a real solid player. He's a real solid guy, veteran leader, brings a lot of experience, a great communicator, but I just don't think he's that top AR that has the ability to slay with the other top ARs, and I think that's the only thing that's really holding FaZe back at this point. I think Zuma was really impressive this event. He seems to be really finding his form and getting back to his AW form, which is very encouraging for FaZe. And then you pair that with Attach, who's been a top sub in the game for feels like years now. Attach has been really consistent sub for a while now, and then Priesta as well has really found his own at that flex position. So I think, I'm interested. I think EG and FaZe, I think they got to go after Clay. I think he's going to be the clear top AR free agent that I think could take both of those teams to the next level. And I'm really interested to see what they do come free agency time. But with that said, guys, I am going to move over and shift gears real quick and touch on the whole Clay drama that went on Friday. So if you guys didn't see, Clay against Era Eternity came out and broke the gentleman's agreements. He pulled out the M1 Garand, and they went on to win the series, which obviously sparked up a lot of controversy. My personal take on it is that, as you guys know, I've been very vocal. I fucking hate gentleman's agreements. I'm glad someone broke them, but in the manner in which in which Clay broke them, I think was wrong. I don't think the way he went about it was the correct way to do it. In my opinion, what he should have done is, they as a team, E United as a team, should have come out before the event started and told everyone and made it vocal that we are not going to follow the gentleman's agreements. They shouldn't have, because one thing to point out is that, if they'd have pulled this on Optic, Clay already got flamed for it, but if they would have pulled this on Optic, you're talking about, he might have had his career ruined. And, it was just, it wasn't fair to Era to just pull that on him right before the match. If they didn't pull that on the other teams in their pool. So it really wasn't fair to Era. And I know Clay, offered up to, he felt really bad for it, and he apologized on Twitter, and he offered to give his, earnings to Era, which I thought was a nice gesture, very respectful gesture. Look, Clay's an emotional guy. He's a passionate guy. He's an emotional guy. And I think sometimes he'll be the first one to tell you he does let his emotions get the best of him sometimes. But look, he owned up to his mistake, and like I said, but let's not lose focus here. The fundamental problem here is the gentleman's agreements. Once again, this was bound to happen because of the silliness of gentleman's agreements, and again, this is why I harp on gentlemen's agreements. They have to go. They have to go. There's no reason for them. The pros have got to do a better job of creating a dialogue with CWL and MLG and getting a proper rule set and getting one fundamental rule set. I say it time and time again, and I'm going to keep saying it until we get rid of them. But like I said, guys, that's really all I have to say on gentlemen's agreements. I think they're silly, they're dumb, and that's it. I've made my opinion clear in previous episodes. In case you haven't seen it, go back and watch, and you can hear my full takes on them. But with that said, guys, I think that's going to do it to get today. Sorry for the delay in episode. I wanted to put out the episode after the event had concluded, just to give my full take on how things went. I think we got an update coming out tomorrow for the game, for World War II. Obviously, Sledgehammer is releasing an update. Interested to see what all is in it. Hopefully we get some competitive COD related patches. I'm crossing my fingers. 4-man ranked parties, please, for the love of God. I'm already disappointed it's taking this long, but if it's not in tomorrow, I mean, I don't know what else to say. But interested to see what all is in the patch notes, guys, and I think that's really all that's going on this week, as far as I'm aware. Maybe some things will develop between now and Friday, but be sure to follow the Twitter, guys. That's where I communicate and tweet out new episodes. Be sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel. I'm working on getting a logo right now made, so hopefully I'll have these episodes uploaded onto iTunes soon enough. I'm trying to gravitate away from SoundCloud because I'm not the biggest fan of SoundCloud. But I think that's about it, guys. Be sure to like, follow, subscribe. Leave me feedback. I'm always open to feedback. It really helps me out to get a consensus on what you guys want to see improved. But with that said, guys, I think that's going to do it for today, and I will see you guys on Friday.